Hey guys, it's Rowan and Donovan, and today we will be talking about Ecology Topics 8.1, Responses to the Environment. We're going to be focusing on external stimulus, gene expression, plant response to light, and behavior triggered by seasonal cues. First, I'm going to talk about external stimulus and how different environmental stimuli affect behaviors. So what is a stimulus and what is a response? A stimulus is a change or effect on an environment or on an organism that causes some sort of a change. A response is the change that an organism makes in order to be able to survive against this new stimulus. Think of it as pushing a button to turn on a light in your bedroom, so now your eyes have to contract in order to adjust to the light. In our environment, this usually falls under four main categories: smell food, seek food, predator warnings, fight or flight, and protecting young. Smell food, seek food is when a species smells food and responds by seeking the food and finding a way to get the food. Some examples of this are wolves, then they hunt in packs to find and hunt food. Or when bees find pollen, so they fly back to their hive and do a little dance to tell the other bees where the pollen is, and that is that example on screen. These are all examples of responses to the stimulus of finding food. Predator warnings are when a predator pretty much tells a species not to mess with it. Some examples of this are in the noises that meerkats make, making an alarm to tell other species to stay away. Other example is coloration, for example in brightly colored frogs and snakes, which tell species that they are poisonous and not to be messed with. And those are the two examples you see on screen right now. And lastly, there's marking territory. For example with wolves by howling and peeing, and grizzly bears also do this by scratching high on trees. Then there's fight or flight. This is an immediate reaction or an instinct that a species has when they feel threatened. For example, there's deer, which run away whenever they hear some sort of sound. And on the opposite spectrum, there's wolves, which will hunt in packs to kill any sort of animal or wolf that comes into their territory. So those are two very opposite examples of fight or flight. And lastly, there's protecting young, which is just when a species is doing everything it can to protect its young when there's a threat posed. Some examples of this are elephants in herds protecting their young in the center, which is that example on screen right there, or when mama bears get very aggressive when you get in between them and their calves, which is also another example on screen. And lastly, there's learned behaviors, which happens in many ways. For example, flocking, which is when thousands of birds fly together to keep each other safe.
I'm going to be talking about how gene expression and how it affects living organisms. So gene expression is the process of turning DNA information into a protein. These proteins are able to control traits and the cell's function, and they help determine how the organism survives and how they respond to their environment. The first key step is transcription. The process happens inside of the nucleus cell. During transcription, DNA is copied into a messenger RNA, also known as mRNA. The second key step is translation. Translation happens at the ribosome. In this step, the instructions from the mRNA are used to build a protein. You're probably wondering what's the importance of gene expression. Gene expression is very important because it allows variety within the cell. Even though all the cells in the organism have the same DNA, different genes are turned off or on in different cells. For example, skin and muscle cells contain the same DNA, but they perform different jobs due to them expressing different genes. They are also affected by the environment. An example of this is how sunlight can trigger gene expression within plants. This leads to the production of chlorophyll, which is necessary for photosynthesis to happen.
And now I'm going to be talking about plant responses to light, and phototropism and photoperiodism. So what is phototropism? Phototropism is growing in response to light. So if the light is coming from one side, the auxin will move away from the light, which allows the plant to bend towards the light, which you can see on the right side of your screen right there. There is a constant war between plants and forests to get as much light as you can. So if you look at this beautiful forest right here, it looks so beautiful, but you also have to remember that all the trees that you can see, there's that many trees that you can't see that don't have light, and therefore they're gonna die and the genes will die with them. So there's this constant battle to try to get to that light. So then what is photoperiodism? Well, photoperiodism is a response to how much light there is during the day. And because of natural selection, it's pretty much been decided for the plants that they'll only flower during the summer. Because if you flower too early and winter comes late, the rose may die and won't be able to pass on genes. But if you flower too late, the flower will drop its seeds later, and then winter will come and kills the seeds earlier, or you won't have time to drop the seeds at all. So it's a response to how much sunlight there is during the day, and as well as the environment.
Now I will explain how seasonal cues affect animal behavior. These seasonal cues include changes in temperature, rainfall, daylight hours, and food availability. The first is spring. In spring, there is an increase in rainfall, warmer temperature, and longer days. These conditions often lead to migration and reproduction. For example, monarch butterflies migrate north, and salmon swim upstream to spawn. Birds like robins also migrate to breeding areas to raise their young. The second season is summer. In summer, there's long days and abundant food. Animals use this time to raise their offspring and store energy. For example, bears spend the summer eating large amounts of food to prepare for winter hibernation. Bees are also very active during summer, collecting nectar and pollinating plants. The third season is fall. In fall, the temperatures become cooler and daylight hours become shorter. This leads to migration, dormancy, and food storage. For example, geese migrate south for warmer weather, and squirrels begin to collect and store nuts, and some bears begin preparation for hibernation. The last is winter. In winter, temperatures are cold and food is very scarce. Animals respond with hibernation, adaptation, or migration. For example, bears hibernate during winter, bats also enter hibernation, and caribou migrate to find food. Some animals, like Arctic foxes, adapt by growing thicker fur. In conclusion, these survival strategies like hibernation, migration, and adaptation help the organisms survive during these changing environment conditions.
All right, let's practice. So in this example, meerkats live together in groups to help raise and protect their offspring. Meerkat pups are most vulnerable when they're away from their burrow foraging for food. Adult meerkats exhibit sentinel behavior, standing upright and making alarm calls to warn other members in the group that predators are nearby. In a study of meerkat behaviors, scientists observed meerkats foraging groups and recorded the presence or absence of pups, along with the frequency of adult sentinel behavior. Predict the effect of presence or absence of pups on adult sentinel behavior. Well, first off, what is sentinel behavior? It is a type of cooperative behavior where one animal will act as a lookout while the rest of the group goes about taking care of themselves and others. It's kind of the same as a sentinel or a lookout in the military who keeps an eye on the enemy while others sleep. So I'll give you a second to answer this question, and then we'll go through it together. All right. Well, the answer is that the scientists determined that sentinel behavior increased when pups were present in the foraging group. This is because this is a response to an external stimulus, which in this case is a threat to the pups, which causes the species to become more protective in order to protect the pups.
This is a little bit like what we talked about earlier in the video with responses to external stimuluses, when animals get protective when there is a threat to their young. So today we covered external stimulus and responses to environment, gene expression, plant responses to light, and behaviors triggered by seasonal cues. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and see you guys next week.